Jake Miller stood in the waiting chamber outside the Galactic Council Hall. His hands were sweaty inside his formal diplomatic gloves. Through the massive crystal windows, he could see the swirling colors of 3 different suns casting rainbow patterns across the metal walls of Nexus Prime Station. He had been Earth's ambassador for 2 years now, but he still felt small in this place. The station was huge beyond imagination. Millions of beings from hundreds of worlds lived and worked here. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Jake needed his computer to tell him which end was their head. The door chimed softly. A floating sphere of blue light appeared next to him. The translation device spoke in a calm voice. "Ambassador Miller, the council is ready for you." Jake straightened his tie and walked through the doorway. The council chamber was even bigger. Then he remembered. Rows of seats curved upward in a giant circle, each one designed for a different type of alien body. Some seats were filled with water for the fish-like delegates. Others glowed with heat for the rock creatures from the hot worlds. In the center of the room stood a tall, thin being that looked like it was made of living crystal. Its body caught the light and threw it back in beautiful patterns. This was Veltar, the council's chief anthropologist. Jake had met him before at boring dinner parties, but the crystal being had always been polite and quiet. Today, Veltar looked different. There was something sharp in the way he moved, something that made Jake's stomach feel tight. "Ambassador Miller!" Veltar's voice rang out clear and cold through the translation system. "Please take your place at the human station." Jake walked to his assigned spot, a simple chair and desk that looked tiny compared to the alien structures around. He sat down and activated his recording device. Whatever was about to happen, Earth would want to know about it. Veltar moved to the center of the chamber. His crystal body seemed to grow brighter as all eyes turned toward him. "Honored delegates, we gather today to discuss a matter of great concern. Our cultural research teams have been studying the human homeworld for the past 5 years. What we have discovered is both fascinating and deeply troubling." Jake felt his heart start to beat faster. This did not sound good. "The humans," Veltar continued, "have developed an unprecedented number of combat disciplines. Our teams have cataloged over 300 distinct forms of organized fighting: boxing, wrestling, martial arts, fencing, and countless others. They compete in these violent activities for entertainment and sport." A ripple of sound went through the chamber. Jake could hear the musical tones of the Melodian delegates, which his translator told him meant shock and distress. The large, furry Zenkari were making deep humming sounds that indicated worry. Veltar raised one crystal arm for silence. To put this in perspective, the peaceful Zenkari have developed 12 forms of competitive activity, all focused on meditation and harmony. The scholarly Vorthun have 8 academic competitions. The artistic Melodians have 15 different musical contests. Most species in our database have no organized combat activities at all. Jake started to stand up, but Veltar was not finished. This obsession with ritualized violence raises serious questions about human nature. Are they a warrior species hiding behind a mask of civilization? Are they naturally aggressive beings who will eventually turn their fighting skills against their galactic neighbors? Now Jake did stand up. "If I may respond to these concerns, you may not," interrupted a new voice. Jake turned to see Commander Zephox of the Kragite Empire rising from his seat. The Kragites were one of the few military species in the council, and Zephox was a giant even by their standards. His gray skin was covered in scars and his 4 arms were thick with muscle. "The humans are clearly a dangerous species," Zephox declared. "They spend their free time learning how to hurt each other. They celebrate violence and make heroes of their best fighters. This is not the behavior of a peaceful civilization." More sounds of agreement came from around the chamber. Jake felt panic rising in his chest. This was going very wrong, very fast. Dr. Kethril, the ancient leader of the Vorthun delegation, spoke next. Her voice was thin and shaky with age, but her words cut through the chamber like a knife. "In our 1,000 years of recorded history, we have seen many species rise and fall. The ones who glorify combat are always the ones who bring destruction. Always. The floating jellyfish-like beings from Aquatica began flashing red and orange patterns on their transparent bodies. Jake's translator told him this meant they were afraid. Very afraid. Veltar moved closer to Jake's station. Ambassador Miller, these concerns cannot be ignored. Several member species are questioning whether humans should remain in the Galactic Council. Some are even discussing trade restrictions and travel bans. Jake felt the weight of his entire species' future pressing down on his shoulders. Earth had worked for 50 years to join the galactic community. Humans had given up their weapons, opened their borders, and shared their technology. Now it might all be lost because people like to watch boxing matches. The evidence seems clear, Veltar continued. Humans are fundamentally different from other civilized species. Your people seem to enjoy conflict in ways that we find disturbing. Can you explain why your species has developed so many ways to fight each other? The chamber fell completely silent. Even the background hum of the station's life support system seemed to quiet down. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and other sensing organs focused on Jake. He cleared his throat and spoke carefully. Honored delegates, I understand your concerns, but I believe there has been a serious misunderstanding about human nature and our combat sports. The reality is far more complex than it appears on the surface. Then explain it, Dr. Kethril demanded. Make us understand why humans spend so much time learning violence. Jake looked around the chamber at all the worried, frightened, and suspicious faces. He thought about everything he needed to explain. The history, the culture, the philosophy behind human competition. It was too much for a simple answer. I request 48 hours to prepare a full presentation, he said. This question deserves a complete and thorough response. The future of human-galactic relations may depend on your understanding the truth about why we fight. Veltar's crystal body seemed to dim slightly. Very well. You have 2 Earth days to prepare your explanation. But understand this, Ambassador Miller. If you cannot convince this council that humans are not a threat to galactic peace, there will be serious consequences for your species' membership in our community. The session ended with a deep, resonant gong. As the delegates began to file out, Jake sat alone at his small human station, wondering how he was going to save his entire species in just 2 days. Jake Miller rushed back to his quarters on Nexus Prime. His hands shook as he activated the long-range communication system. The blue hologram of Earth appeared in front of him, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. He had never needed his home planet more than he did right now. The connection took several minutes to establish. When the screen finally cleared, Jake saw the familiar face of Director Kate Murphy from the Department of Galactic Affairs. Her office in New York looked warm and welcoming compared to the cold metal walls around him. Jake, you look terrible, Kate said immediately. What happened at the council meeting? We have a problem, Jake said. A big one. The aliens think we're violent because of our sports. They're talking about kicking us out of the galactic community. Kate's face went pale. Sports? What do you mean, sports? Jake quickly explained what had happened in the council chamber. As he talked, he watched Kate's expression change from confusion to worry to something close to panic. Dear God, she whispered when he finished. They think we're savages because we have boxing and wrestling? It's worse than that, Jake said. They've counted over 300 different fighting sports. They think we're obsessed with violence. Some species are so scared they want to cut off all contact with Earth. Kate was quiet for a long moment, thinking hard. Okay, she said finally. We need experts. Real experts who can explain this properly. I'm calling an emergency meeting right now. Kate, I only have 48 hours. Then we'll work fast. Don't worry, Jake. We're going to figure this out. The screen went dark, leaving Jake alone with his racing thoughts. He tried to imagine explaining human nature to beings who had never experienced competition the way humans did. How could he make them understand something that was so basic to human culture? 6 hours later, Jake's communication system chimed again. This time, 3 people appeared on his screen. Kate was there, along with 2 others he didn't recognize. Jake, meet your expert team, Kate said. This is Dr. Lisa Hayes from Harvard University. She studies how different cultures develop around the world. And this is Professor Ben Carter from the Military History Institute. Dr. Hayes was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair. She looked like someone who spent a lot of time thinking about complicated problems. Professor Carter was older, with the straight posture of a former soldier and sharp, intelligent eyes. Ambassador Miller, Dr. Hayes said, I've been reading the reports from your meeting. This is a fascinating case of cultural misunderstanding. The aliens are looking at our sports and seeing only the surface violence. They don't understand the deeper meaning. What deeper meaning? Jake asked. Professor Carter leaned forward. Ambassador, combat sports aren't about violence, they're about control. Every human society that survived learned how to channel aggression into useful activities. The societies that couldn't do this destroyed themselves long ago. Jake felt a spark of hope. Can you explain that in simple terms? These aliens are really smart, but they think very differently than we do. Dr. Hayes nodded. Let me give you the basic story. Humans evolved on a dangerous planet. We had to fight to survive, but we also had to work together. So we developed ways to compete without actually hurting each other too badly. Think about it, Professor Carter added. A boxing match has rules. A wrestling competition has referees. Even ancient gladiator fights had regulations. We took our natural fighting instincts and wrapped them in structure and law. Jake was starting to understand. So you're saying our sports prove we're civilized, not savage? Exactly, Dr. Hayes said. Most animals fight until one dies or runs away. Humans invented the idea of fighting until someone wins, then shaking hands and going home as friends. We need to show them historical examples, Professor Carter said. Medieval tournaments weren't just entertainment. They were training for knights and a way to solve disputes without starting wars. Japanese martial arts taught discipline and honor, not just fighting techniques. Kate spoke up from her desk. I'm also bringing in Coach Amy Stone. She works with the International Sports Federation and trains Olympic athletes. She can explain the modern perspective. A fourth person appeared on the screen. Coach Amy Stone was younger than the others, with the build and confidence of someone who had spent years in athletic competition. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a tracksuit with the Olympic rings on the chest. Ambassador Miller, she said, I've been listening to this conversation, and I think I can help. I work with fighters from all over the world, boxers, wrestlers, martial artists, fencers. You know what they all have in common? What? Jake asked. Respect. The better the fighter, the more respectful they are. They understand that their opponent is helping them become better. In my gym, the toughest guys are usually the nicest ones too. Dr. Hayes was nodding. That's exactly the point we need to make. Human combat sports teach control, respect, and discipline. They don't encourage random violence. They discourage it. I can provide statistics, Professor Carter said. Countries with strong martial arts traditions have lower crime rates. Cities with boxing gyms have fewer street fights. Combat sports give people a safe way to test themselves. Jake felt his confidence returning. Okay, so our message is that fighting sports make us less violent, not more violent? Right, Coach Amy said. When you know how to fight properly, you don't need to prove yourself by being mean to people. You've already proven yourself in the ring. We need to prepare a presentation, Dr. Hayes said. Visual aids, statistics, historical examples. Something that will make sense to alien minds. Kate looked directly at Jake through the screen. Can you arrange for the council to watch some actual sports footage? It might help if they can see what we're talking about. I think so, Jake said. They have holographic projectors that can show Earth broadcasts. Perfect, Professor Carter said. We'll send you recordings of different sports, along with explanations of the rules and traditions behind each one. Coach Amy smiled. And I know some fighters who would be happy to record messages explaining why they compete. Personal stories are always powerful. Dr. Hayes was already taking notes. We'll structure this as an educational presentation. Start with human evolution and explain why we developed differently than other species. Then show how combat sports evolved from survival skills into cultural traditions. How long do we have to put this together? Coach Amy asked. Kate checked her watch. 36 hours until Jake presents to the council. It's going to be tight, but we can do it. Jake felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. He wasn't alone anymore. He had a team of experts who understood both the problem and the solution. One more thing, Professor Carter said seriously. Jake, when you present this, remember that you're not just defending human sports. You're defending the idea that humans can be both strong and peaceful at the same time. That's something most species in the galaxy have never seen before, and that, Dr. Hayes added quietly, might be exactly what they need to learn from us. The conversation continued late into the night as the team worked together to save humanity's place in the galactic community. Jake finally felt ready to face the council again, armed with the truth about why humans fight and what it really means. Jake Miller stood before the Galactic Council once again. This time he felt different. Behind him, a massive holographic screen showed the blue and green surface of Earth. His expert team had worked through the night to prepare everything he needed. The council chamber was packed. Word had spread about the human question, and delegates from across the galaxy had come to hear his explanation. Jake could see the worried faces of the Zenkari, the glowing bodies of the crystal beings, and the floating forms of the water dwellers. Veltar moved to the center of the chamber. Ambassador Miller, you have requested this session to address our concerns about human combat sports. The council is ready to hear your explanation. Jake activated his presentation system. The holographic screen behind him changed to show early humans hunting across ancient plains. The image looked primitive and wild compared to the advanced technology surrounding them. Honored delegates, Jake began. To understand human combat sports, you must first understand how humans evolved. We are different from every other species in this chamber. Dr. Hayes appeared on a smaller screen beside him. Her recorded voice was calm and professional. Humans developed intelligence while remaining physically powerful. Most species in the galaxy became smart by avoiding danger. Humans became smart while facing danger directly. The screen showed images of ancient Earth's dangerous animals. Giant bears, massive cats with long teeth, and huge elephant-like creatures with tusks. Jake watched several alien delegates lean forward with interest. The Zenkari evolved in trees, hiding from predators, Jake continued. The Vorthan developed tools because they were physically weak. The Melodians lived in peaceful environments with few threats. But humans? We hunted creatures 10 times our size with nothing but wooden spears and our bare hands. A new image appeared showing early humans working together to bring down a mammoth. The aliens in the chamber made sounds of amazement. The idea of small beings attacking such large creatures seemed impossible to them. Professor Carter's voice joined the presentation. This created a unique problem for human society. We had to be aggressive enough to hunt dangerous animals, but peaceful enough to live together in groups. Societies that were too violent destroyed themselves. Societies that weren't violent enough starved. Jake paused to let this sink in. He could see understanding beginning to dawn on some faces in the chamber. So humans developed something no other species needed, Jake said. We learned how to fight without killing each other. We learned how to be violent in a controlled way. The screen changed to show ancient Greek wrestlers competing in the Olympics. The athletes were strong and fierce, but they followed strict rules. When one man won, both fighters embraced and walked away as friends. This is the true origin of human combat sports, Jake explained. They were never about causing harm. They were about learning control. Coach Amy Stone appeared on the screen standing in a modern boxing gym. Behind her, 2 fighters were sparring while a referee watched carefully. Every human combat sport has 3 things, she said. Rules that protect the fighters, referees who enforce fairness and respect between opponents. Jake gestured to the screen. Watch what happens when these fighters finish their round. The 2 boxers touched gloves, smiled, and began discussing techniques. One showed the other how to improve his footwork. The other shared advice about defense. They were helping each other become better fighters. A ripple of surprise went through the alien delegates. This was not what they had expected to see. In human culture, Jake continued, the strongest fighters are usually the most respectful people. They have nothing to prove through bullying or cruelty. They test themselves against worthy opponents who can fight back. Dr. Hayes appeared again. Combat sports became a way for humans to channel aggressive instincts into positive activities. Instead of fighting in the streets, young people could compete in organized matches. Instead of settling disputes with violence, communities could hold tournaments. The presentation showed statistics from Earth. Countries with strong martial arts traditions had lower crime rates. Cities with boxing programs had fewer gang problems. Areas with wrestling schools had more cooperation between different groups. The data is clear, Jake said. Combat sports reduce real violence, they don't increase it. Commander Zefox, the large crag-eyed warrior, stood up suddenly. This makes no sense, he declared. How can learning to fight make beings less violent? Coach Amy answered from the screen. Because real fighting is about discipline, not anger. When you train properly, you learn to control your emotions. You learn to respect your opponent. You learn that violence should only be used when absolutely necessary. Jake clicked to the next part of his presentation. The screen showed children in a martial arts class, bowing to their instructor and each other. The young humans were learning precise movements, but more importantly, they were learning respect and self-control. Human children who study combat sports are less likely to be bullies, Jake explained. They're more confident, more disciplined, and more respectful of others. The sports teach them when fighting is appropriate and when it isn't. Dr. Kethril, the ancient Vorthan leader, spoke in her thin voice. But why so many different types of combat? Why not just one? Professor Carter answered this question. Different fighting styles developed in different parts of Earth, each suited to different needs. Wrestling for close combat, fencing for weapon skills, boxing for striking techniques. Each style taught different lessons about strategy, timing, and human nature. Jake moved to his final point. The real truth about human combat sports is this. They represent our greatest achievement as a species. We took our natural aggression and transformed it into art, sport, and personal development. The screen showed a montage of different sports. Olympic wrestling matches where competitors from enemy nations embraced after competition. Mixed martial arts fighters helping each other train. Elderly martial arts masters teaching young students about patience and wisdom. Every other species in this chamber found peace by avoiding conflict, Jake said. Humans found peace by learning to control conflict. We are the only species that became civilized while remaining warriors. The chamber was completely silent. Jake could see the alien delegates thinking hard about what they had heard. Veltar finally spoke. You are saying that combat sports make humans better beings, not worse ones? Yes, Jake replied firmly. They teach us courage without cruelty, strength without brutality, and competition without hatred. They make us better humans. A young, Melodian delegate raised a tentacle. Could other species learn these combat sports? Jake smiled. Every human fighting style welcomes new students regardless of where they come from. The only requirements are respect, discipline, and willingness to learn. The presentation ended with Jake feeling cautiously optimistic. He had presented the truth about human combat sports as clearly as possible. Now he could only wait to see if the galactic community would understand and accept it. The council fell into deep discussion, their various languages creating a symphony of alien sounds. Throughout the great chamber, Commander Zefox stood up from his massive seat. His 4 gray arms crossed over his chest as he stared down at Jake Miller. The crag-eyed warrior was nearly 8 feet tall, and his scarred face showed nothing but doubt. Pretty words, human, Zefox said, his voice booming through the translation system. But words are easy. Your presentation shows videos and statistics, but I have seen real violence. I have commanded armies. What you call sport looks like preparation for war to me. Several other delegates nodded in agreement. Jake felt his heart sink. Despite everything his team had prepared, the aliens still weren't convinced. You want us to believe that humans fight for fun and friendship? Zefox continued. That your warriors embrace after trying to hurt each other? This sounds like lies to make us think you are harmless. Jake looked around the chamber. Many of the peaceful species were still watching nervously. The Zenkari were humming in their deep, worried tones. The crystal beings flickered with uncertain light patterns. Commander Zefox, Jake said carefully. I understand your doubts, but everything I've shown you is true. Human combat sports are about respect and control, not hatred and destruction. Prove it, Zefox demanded. Show us real human fighters, not recordings. Let us see this respectful violence with our own eyes. Jake felt a moment of panic. He hadn't planned for this kind of challenge, but then he remembered something Coach Amy had mentioned during their planning session. She had friends who worked on the civilian transport ships that traveled between Earth and the outer colonies. I can arrange that, Jake said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Give me 12 hours to contact Earth. I can have real fighters here to demonstrate. Veltar moved forward, his crystal body catching the chamber's lights. The Council agrees to this demonstration. But understand, Ambassador Miller, if what we see confirms our fears about human violence, the consequences will be severe. Jake nodded and hurried from the chamber. Back in his quarters, he activated the emergency communication system. It took several tries to reach Coach Amy Stone, but when her face finally appeared on the screen, she was smiling. Jake, how did the presentation go? They want a live demonstration, Jake said quickly. Do you know any fighters who can get here fast? Amy's expression became serious. Actually, yes. Marcus Rivera and Danny Walsh are on a transport ship heading to the Outer Rim colonies for a charity exhibition. They should be passing near Nexus Prime in about 10 hours. Can you contact them? Already on it, Amy said, her fingers flying over her communication device. Marcus is a mixed martial arts champion and Danny is one of the best boxers on Earth. They're also good friends and training partners. Perfect for showing what you're talking about. Jake felt a spark of hope. Will they understand what's at stake here? Jake, these guys represent humanity every time they compete. They know how to handle pressure, don't worry, they'll make us proud. 12 hours later, Jake stood in a special demonstration area that had been set up in the council chambers. The alien delegates filled the viewing seats, their various forms creating a bizarre audience. Some floated in water tanks, others glowed with internal light, and a few were so strange that Jake couldn't even tell which direction they were facing. The main floor had been cleared and covered with protective mats. Medical equipment stood, ready, though Jake hoped it wouldn't be needed. 2 human figures walked into the area, and Jake felt relief wash over him. Marcus Rivera was exactly what Jake had hoped for. The mixed martial arts fighter was clearly strong and dangerous, but his demeanor was calm and respectful. He bowed slightly to the alien audience before taking his place on the mats. Danny Walsh looked like he could knock out a bull with one punch, but his eyes were kind and intelligent. He smiled at Marcus and clasped his hand in the traditional fighter's greeting. Honored delegates, Jake announced. These are professional human fighters. Marcus Rivera specializes in mixed martial arts, which combines several fighting styles. Danny Walsh is a champion boxer. They will demonstrate controlled combat for you. Commander Zefox leaned forward in his seat. Let them fight for real, no holding back. We want to see true human violence. Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice carrying clearly through the translation system. Commander, we will fight with full intensity, but you'll see that intensity and violence are not the same thing. The 2 humans moved to opposite sides of the mat. They bowed to each other, then raised their hands in fighting positions. Jake held his breath as they began to circle each other. What happened next amazed every alien in the chamber. Marcus and Danny fought with incredible skill and power. Marcus threw kicks that could break bones, while Danny countered with punches that moved faster than most aliens could see. They grappled on the ground, each trying to gain advantage over the other. But something else was happening that the aliens had never seen before. Even as they fought, the 2 humans were clearly enjoying themselves. Marcus smiled when Danny landed a good punch. Danny nodded with approval when Marcus executed a difficult throw. After 3 minutes of intense combat, a timer sounded. Immediately, both fighters stopped and stepped back. Their faces showed exhaustion and some minor bruises, but no anger or hatred. Then something happened that shocked every alien in the chamber. Danny walked over to Marcus and put his arm around his shoulders. Nice job with that takedown, he said. You've been working on your ground game. Marcus grinned back. Thanks. Your footwork is getting better too. That combination in the second minute almost got me. They began discussing techniques, pointing out moves they had used and suggesting improvements. It was clear they were helping each other become better fighters, even though they had just been trying to defeat each other. The chamber erupted in confused alien sounds. The Zenkari's humming rose to a higher pitch. The Melodians flashed rapid color patterns. Even the normally stoic Vorthun were chattering among themselves. A young Melodian delegate managed to make herself heard above the noise. I don't understand. They were fighting to win, but now they're friends? Danny heard the question and answered directly. We were never enemies. Marcus helps me train every week. The harder we fight in practice, the better we both become. Fighting someone you respect makes you stronger. Marcus nodded. In human culture, your greatest opponents often become your closest friends. They push you to be your best. Without Danny challenging me, I would never improve. Dr. Kethril, the ancient Vorthun leader, spoke in her thin voice. You are saying that you become friends through fighting? Through competing, Marcus corrected gently. When you face someone in honest combat, you learn who they really are. You see their courage, their skill, their character. It creates a special bond. The demonstration continued with other examples. The humans showed different fighting styles, always stopping to explain techniques and rules. Each time, they displayed the same pattern. Intense competition followed, by immediate friendship and mutual respect. Commander Zephox watched in amazement as the two humans helped each other practice new moves. His understanding of combat had been completely turned upside down. In Kragite culture, he said slowly, warriors fight until one submits or dies. The winner takes everything. The loser is forgotten. But you fight to make each other stronger? Exactly, Jake said. That's what human combat sports really teach, how to compete without destroying each other. As the demonstration ended, Jake could see that the aliens' fear was being replaced by curiosity and wonder. They had witnessed something they had never imagined possible. Warriors who fought with friendship instead of hatred. The council chamber fell into complete silence after Marcus and Danny finished their demonstration. Jake Miller watched the alien delegates staring at the two human fighters, who were now sitting together on the mat, sharing water and laughing about something Danny had said. Veltar moved slowly to the center of the chamber. His crystal body was dimmer than usual, and he seemed to be struggling with something. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter and more uncertain than Jake had ever heard it. Ambassador Miller, Veltar said, what we have witnessed today changes everything. But before we discuss the implications, the council has something to confess to you. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The way Veltar spoke suggested this was bigger than just a discussion about sports. The truth is, Veltar continued, we did not call this inquiry because we feared human violence. We called it because we desperately need it. The chamber erupted in confused sounds from the various species. Even the other council members seemed surprised by this revelation. Jake stood up from his seat, his heart pounding. What do you mean? Jake asked. Dr. Kethril, the ancient Vorthun leader, rose slowly from her chair. Her voice shook with age and emotion. 300 years ago, our sensors detected them at the edge of the galaxy. We call them the Devourers. They are a species that exists only to consume and destroy. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Consume and destroy what? Everything. Commander Zephox answered grimly. Planets, species, entire civilizations. We managed to hide from them in the outer rim, but our long-range scanners show they are returning. They will reach the core worlds within 50 years. Veltar's crystal body began to pulse with a slow, sad light. We have incredible technology, Ambassador Miller. We can travel faster than light, manipulate matter at the atomic level, and create artificial worlds. But we have one terrible weakness. Which is? Jake asked, though he was beginning to understand. We cannot fight, said a new voice. Jake turned to see a representative of the aquatic species rising from her water tank. When the Devourers first attacked, entire fleets of our ships fled without firing a shot. Our people are physically incapable of violence. Dr. Kethril nodded sadly. The Zenkari meditate instead of fighting. The Melodians sing beautiful songs when threatened. My own people, the Vorthon, retreat into academic debate. Even the Kragites, for all their warrior culture, panic when faced with real combat. Commander Zephox's forearms hung limp at his sides. It is true, my people speak of glory and honor. But when the devourers came, we ran like frightened children. We have weapons, but no warriors. We have the tools of war, but not the will to use them. Jake looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Now he understood the fear he had seen earlier. They weren't afraid of humans. They were afraid for themselves. You want us to fight them, Jake said. It wasn't a question. Not just fight them, Veltar said. We want you to teach us how to fight them, how to face an enemy without fleeing, how to stand and fight when everything inside you wants to run away. Marcus Rivera stood up from the mat, wiping sweat from his face. Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing. You're saying an entire galaxy of peaceful species is being threatened by destroyers, and you need humans to help? That is exactly what we are saying, Dr. Kethril replied. Danny Walsh joined Marcus, looking serious for the first time since arriving. How many species are we talking about? Over 4,000 civilized species across the galaxy, Veltar answered. Trillions of beings who have never known violence, never learned to fight, never developed the ability to defend themselves. Jake felt the enormous weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. And you think human combat sports can help with this? We think human combat sports might be the key to everything, Veltar said. What we saw today was not just fighting. We saw courage, discipline, and the ability to face conflict without fear. These are things our species have never developed. Coach Amy Stone's voice came through Jake's communication device. She had been listening to the entire conversation from Earth. Jake, this is incredible. They're not asking us to be soldiers. They're asking us to be teachers. Marcus walked over to Jake. Sir, if I may make a suggestion, what these people need isn't combat training. They need confidence training. They need to learn that they can face scary situations and survive. The principles are the same, Danny added. Martial arts teach you to control fear, make quick decisions under pressure, and never give up. Those skills work whether you're in a boxing ring or defending your planet. Dr. Kethril leaned forward in her chair. Could it really work? Could peaceful species learn to be warriors? Not warriors, Jake said, understanding flooding through him. Protectors. There's a difference. Warriors seek conflict. Protectors face conflict when they have no choice, but they fight to defend what they love. Veltar's crystal body began to glow brighter. Yes, that is exactly what we need. We need to learn to be protectors. Commander Zephox stood up, his massive form towering over the chamber. The Kragite Empire formally requests human combat instructors for our people. We want to learn this. Controlled violence. The Zenkari also request teachers, said their representative. We wish to learn how to find peace through strength. One by one, representatives from dozens of species stood and made similar requests. Jake watched in amazement as the entire galactic community asked Earth for help. There's something else, Veltar said quietly. The Devourers are not just destroyers. They are also fighters. They know combat in ways we cannot imagine. If we are to have any hope against them, we need to learn from the only species in the galaxy that understands both fighting and civilization. Jake looked at Marcus and Danny, then back at the assembled aliens. Are you sure about this? Human combat sports are built on the idea that fighting should be fair, controlled, and respectful. Real combat against destroyers won't be any of those things. That is why we need you, Dr. Kethril said. You must teach us not just how to fight, but how to fight without becoming the very thing we oppose, how to remain civilized beings even in the face of ultimate evil. Marcus stepped forward. Ambassador, Danny and I volunteer to start the program. We can begin with basic principles, discipline, courage, controlled aggression. Build from there. I can coordinate with martial arts schools across Earth, Coach Amy said through the communicator. We can have instructors ready to travel to any world that needs them. Jake looked around the chamber one final time. The faces that had seemed so alien and frightening now looked hopeful and determined. Humanity had found its purpose in the galactic community, not as conquerors but as teachers of courage. The Earth accepts this responsibility, Jake said formally. We will teach you to fight not because we love violence, but because we love peace enough to defend it. As the council session ended with thunderous approval from hundreds of species, Jake realized that humanity's greatest strength had never been their ability to fight. It was their ability to fight without losing their humanity. The galaxy was about to learn what it truly meant to be human.